Hi and welcome to Painting with Yuk-Sem. Today we're going to do an acrylic painting of a fall forest. So let's get started. So I'm using the 1-inch brush, adding a little bit of water to it, and that helps me when I start painting to thin out the paint a little bit and get better coverage on the canvas. So I'm just picking up the titanium white, and the sun's going to be at the top, and then there's going to be a path down here. So what I'm going to do is just start putting on some of the titanium white in the area where I want the sun and the back of the path. One of the key things that I'm doing is, even because the canvas is white and I'm using the white paint, I am making it fairly liquid so that it won't dry right away, and I'll be able to use some of that white after in when I want to get some of that blending. So I just add white more or less to the center of my canvas. So now I'm going to go right in and I'm going to take some of my dark brown. I haven't washed my brush, and I just picked up a little bit of the brown on it with the white, because I'm just going to come in and just kind of work in where I want that path to go and what I want it to look like. And then let's make that the horizon line. So this will be the back, here's the path, and we'll have the trees coming up. So what I'm going to start with is, I'm not going to get any more paint. I'm just going to use what's on there. It's picked up a little bit of the white that was already there. And using my brush, I'm just going to very, very gently in the background here add a few just really light brush strokes vertically up, and that's going to give be the trees that are in the distance. So what you want to do with the tree is make sure that the top of it is not wider than the base. So that's something that you always just have to make sure that you keep in mind, is that perspective. So this one's going to be splitting off. Maybe this one has one there. Just a couple of friends that live nearby. And you don't always have to start right at the bottom. Sometimes you'll just catch a glimpse of the trees in the background. So once you have that, then you can just pick up a little bit more of that brown, and let's just say this one, I want it to be a little bit darker. And then as I move up, that's where you want the darker trees to start to appear. So as the trees are getting closer in the perspective, what we're going to do is we're going to go further and further down our canvas. And we're going to add a little bit more color each time. So here's one of those trees. And you can go over the ones that you already have. That's not a problem. And just remembering that you want your tree to always be a bit thicker at the bottom than it is at the top. So I'm just going to get a few of these marked in, and then we're going to come in with our leaves, and we can come in and add some more trees after. So now I'm going to wash my brush off. And because we started with the white, what I'm going to want to do is come in with the lightest of the colors that we're going to use. So with the same brush, I'm just picking up some of the yellow, and I'm going to add a little bit of the white to it. Just what the white does to even cadmium yellow tends to be see-through. So by adding a little bit of white to it, it actually gives it a little bit more opaque, so it doesn't lose. You can get a bit more coverage. So what I'm doing is I'm using the corner of my brush and I'm turning it, and I'm just dabbing. And by using the corner and turning your brush, you're actually going to create different patterns on the canvas. Once again, with the yellow and the white. And I'm going to stay around where the sun is, and this is just creating some of those leaves around where the sun is. And then because there's some in that arch, I'm going to want to come in and add just a little bit. So now I've turned my brush horizontally, and I just want to come in and add a little bit of that yellow down here for where the leaves have fallen. Now that I have the yellow, a little bit of water again, I'm going to go and grab a little bit of that orange. If you don't have orange, you can always use, add a little bit of red to the yellow. That'll create an orange. This is a little bit more of that cadmium orange, so it's got really nice strong power. So that's why I added a little bit of yellow to it, just to subdue. And again, just using the corner, leaving the white and then the yellow. So I'm just on the outside of that yellow, coming in with some of those dabs, and you can really press into your canvas to be able to get the smaller areas. So now instead of adding yellow, I'm just picking up the straight orange as we get further away to get that color, to make that nice arch around the sun. And the same as we did with the yellow down here, we're going to now just drop in a few of that orange on the outside, and we'll come in and add some details later on. But we just want to make sure that we have some of those colors being reflected down here. And then we're going to go into the red. You can pick up a little bit of the orange if you want, just to get that first layer. And don't be afraid to leave some of the white showing, that's fine, because it'll be from that background. It'll be there. I'm going over some of the orange. You don't want to lose all of it. If you do, just come back in and add some orange again. That'll be fine. Adding now that red. And as you start going into the corners, I want less and less white to be showing. So I want to make sure that I'm getting a better coverage with the red. And again, a little bit of that red just down in the areas down here. And then the last color is with the magenta. And you'll see that this is where you start getting those shadows. So because it's the first really dark color that we're using, you want to make sure that the edges where it meets the red are nice and crisp, and that you have almost that leaf shape. Every once in a while, just making sure that some of those magenta leaves are the ones that really show up. Canvases are pretty tough. You can give them a lot of pressure, and then it won't damage the canvas. So don't be afraid to really push that brush into it to get some of that, some of those shapes and things like that happening on your canvas. Sounds kind of like a drum going on there. Now that we have a lot of the color, what I'm going to do is, with that red and the magenta, I'm going to add a bit of black to it, and it'll turn it into more of a brown maroon, and then that's how I'm going to come in and finish up some of the corners. Because the sun isn't back and coming through all the trees, what you're going to find is that the trees that are closest to you don't have very much light, so that's where you can get away with having a little bit more of that shadowed dark leaves and trees happening. Every once in a while here there might be some of them overlapping, kind of like that. And then we're going to do the same thing down at the bottom. And now I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to making sure that my brush is going to stay a little bit more horizontal when I'm coming in, because I want it to look more like the leaves that have fallen, and you don't want to have them vertical too much, because it'll start looking like they're more of a bush or something standing up. So if you want them to look like it's more of the blanket, that's where you want that brush to stay more horizontal. With that same color, and I haven't really washed my brush as I've gone through the colors, and now it's got a mix of it. I've just added some of the white, and what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of that color right across the back. We can come back and do some of those trees again if we need to, but all we're going to do is dust it with a little bit of that pink. And now I can wash my brush and then come back in with a bit of the white. And what that'll do is that it should give you a really nice, almost misty look for those back hills. Just the back of the forest that's not quite got any. Here's a bit of yellow in there. Just to say that there's some forest happening back there as well. Now what we get to do is to work a little bit more on our trees. So I'm going to change to the angled brush, and I'm going to come in with the brown. And now we're going to work on seeing what the perspective is that we want. So the first tree, sometimes you just got to be brave and bold and try and put one in there. If your brown doesn't show very much, or you're seeing through it, you can always just add a bit of black to it. And I have my brush vertically. I'm just going to bring it all the way down. As I get closer to the bottom, I'm pressing a little bit more just to fan out the hairs on the brush to make that trunk. Let's say maybe right about here there lives a little branch. And then you can come in, pick up a little bit more just to define it. the way to get that nice crisp edge is really to have that wet paint. So make sure that if you want that edge, that's something that you do. So you don't have to start it right at the top. This one, we're just going to come in here, press down. When you get closer to the bottom, it'll fan it out. And maybe there's another one living right next to it there. This. The only thing is that if you're doing any branches in front of the trees, that you really have to make sure that that back tree doesn't cut through it. And if it does, make sure that you add a little bit in front of it again. One way to, when you have, let's say you've made all your leaves before, if you want to look like this tree is behind the leaves, is that you have it there, but then you can just add a little piece through it, and that actually looks like it's behind now, that this area of leaves is in front of that trunk, so it looks like there's a little bit of perspective there. So that's one of the neat ways that you can start building some perspective as well. So now we're just going to keep on adding a few more trees, coming in, remembering near the base to press a little bit harder and make sure that it's thicker. And you can tell that just now I'm using just black as I get closer to the front, but just by having the difference in color from the light brown that was with the white and then going into a bit more of a defined brown and then the black, it really gives you that perspective without too much effort. So we're going to come in and let's give this side a little bit of attention. And if ever, let's say you have a brush stroke that you don't like, if you're fast enough with your acrylics, you should be able to just use a bit of water and it should clean it up fairly easily. And then you can just come in with the actual color. Because if the paint underneath is dry, then the paint that you've just put on is wet and can actually just be wiped off with a bit of water, which is a nice way. It's kind of like a magic eraser when you're doing your painting. If there's a bit of your hand was shaky or your brush got a little bit out of control and added a few more lines than what you wanted. So I'm just using the smaller brush and coming in and adding in a few of those smaller branches. So one of the things with the branches is that you always want it to go from bigger to smaller. So you never want to have a branch up top that's bigger than the stem or the trunk of the tree. So the branches will always be going smaller and smaller. So that's some of the techniques that you can practice as we go. So now I'm just going to come in and make sure that we can add maybe one or two more trees here. There, we'll just add it like that. And then I'm just going to pick up a little bit of that brown and redo some of those trunks, and then we'll get to the details. These are some of the trunks that we had done before. I just painted over. So all I want to do is make sure that we don't forget that we painted over them. With that background. Maybe add one more there. A bit of the black. There. All right, so now we're going to go on to the path. So what I'm doing is I've laid my brush now horizontally, and I'm going to come and where I had that mark, I'm going to make sure that I come in and cover that over. I still have some black, and I'm just going left to right over that whole area with the path. I'm going to grab a bit of the lighter brown as we go. As we get closer. And then a bit of that white to lighten up that path. All the way to the edge here. And remember, worst comes worst, if you want to do the edge and you can't get to it, just flip it around. Nobody knows, but you'll be able to get that cleaner edge. There we go. Now with some of the gold highlights, so I've got a gold, or you can just use a nice ochre. And what I'm going to come in and do is just go over some of the areas with that have some of the color. And what the gold ends up doing is it adds some of the highlights throughout it, and the light will catch it. And it will look like the sun is catching some of those areas. If you don't have the gold, like I said, you can use an ochre, which is more of a yellowish brown, and that will give you the same effect of just highlighting and making sure that it blends a little bit better. And then I'm just going to come in with a mix of the brown and the black, because wherever you have that tree, you're going to want to add a little bit of shadow from the sun, making sure that there's a little bit of that shadow on the shaded side. So wherever the sun is, you're going to draw a line and follow that line with some of that shade. From the sun, it hits here, so all you do is follow that line, and that will give you your shaded area behind the trees. The nice thing is about paint is that when you go over it, you can just keep on adding paint, and nobody knows whether or not there was supposed to be a tree there or there wasn't. And then remember, every once in a while, if there is a branch, you might want to add that. So one of the last things I'm going to do is come in with this. And now, because I have the gold or the ochre as the highlights, when you come in here, you can come in and add, just with my small brush, I'm just going to come and dab some of those gold leaves, especially around the areas with where the colors change. Because what that does is that'll break up the eye between the white and the yellow, and then between the yellow and the orange, and where you have the tips of the branches, it'll look like that light is catching it. And it'll give you a really nice kind of glow effect. On your painting. So I'm trying not to put that gold too much into that dark area back there. And then the last piece you can do here is on the sunny side of the tree. If you just use that gold, and now you can see it really nice on the black. Is that you're just highlighting it with a bit of that gold on the sunny side. Not the shady side of the tree, but on the sunny side of the tree. And that'll just finish it with that nice impression of that golden light hitting all those trees in your forest. And just like that. And you can keep on adding trees and leaves and a bit of gold. Don't be afraid to try it out, especially with the gold for that highlight. As the light hits it, you'll see it really does change the effect and make it a little bit more interactive and really nice highlights. So thank you, and we'll see you next time on Painting with Yuk-Sem. I hope you enjoyed it.